First story. Alright, so this happened a few years ago, and I still get a kick out of telling it to my friends, especially when they're having a bad day. You ever make a split-second decision that turns your entire weekend upside down? That's basically what happened to me when I ended up joining a competitive paintball team, by accident. Let me set the scene. I was in my mid-20s, single, and living in a pretty small town. The most exciting thing to do there was to either go to the local bar or, if you were feeling extra adventurous, drive to the next town over for karaoke night. On this particular Saturday, though, my buddy Ryan texted me, asking if I wanted to check out a paintball place that had just opened up nearby. Now, I'd never played paintball before, but I thought, sure, why not? It could be fun, right? So, we get there, and the place is packed. I'm talking full parking lot, people in tactical gear everywhere, some carrying around their custom paintball guns like they were heading into an actual war zone. Ryan and I? Yeah, we were not those people. We rolled up in jeans and hoodies, looking like we'd just stumbled in after a target run. But we were there for fun, not to win any medals. The thing is, when we got to the counter to pay and rent our gear, the guy behind the desk immediately assumed we were there for the event. Now, I didn't know there was an event going on that day. Apparently, there was some kind of local paintball tournament, and teams from all over were competing. But before I could even protest, Ryan, who is always down for whatever, says, "Yeah, we're here for the event." At that point, I figured, whatever, we'll just roll with it. Maybe they'll put us in a beginner's group or something. Except that's not what happened. After getting our gear and paying a hefty entrance fee, way more than I expected, we were led to this waiting area where a bunch of legit teams were gearing up. I'm talking jerseys with team logos, face masks that looked straight out of Call of Duty, and guns that I later found out were worth more than my rent. Ryan, of course, was hyped. I, on the other hand, was sweating. We were supposed to be a team alpha for the day, which already sounded intimidating. They paired us with 3 other guys who we'd never met. These guys were serious. They introduced themselves like we were about to run a covert military operation. One guy, Jake, had been playing paintball for 8 years. 8 years. He looked at us, clearly noticing we were way out of our depth, but to his credit, he didn't say anything. Just nodded and told us to follow his lead. The first round was a blur. I'd never been shot with a paintball before, and let me tell you, it hurts. I got lit up so fast I didn't even have time to react. Ryan somehow managed to stay alive long enough to at least shoot at someone, but I spent most of that round hiding behind a bunker, getting pelted from every direction. When we regrouped, Jake tried to give us some pointers. "You gotta move fast, stay low, and communicate," he said. Easier said than done when you've got people shooting at you with military precision. But Ryan was all in, talking strategy like he'd been preparing for this his whole life. I just nodded and tried to look like I knew what I was doing. The next couple of rounds went slightly better. I managed to not get eliminated in the first 30 seconds, which felt like a win. At one point, I even hit someone. Granted, it was pure luck, but I'll take what I can get. By the time lunch rolled around, I was ready to call it quits. My body was sore, I had welts forming on my arms and legs, and I was pretty sure I'd pulled a muscle diving behind a barricade. But Ryan? Oh, he was pumped. "Dude, we're not doing that bad. We just need to focus in the next round." So, after some cheap concession stand food and a pep talk from Jake, we went back out there. This time, I decided to be more aggressive. I ran from cover to cover, shooting at anything that moved. I was starting to get the hang of it. In fact, I was feeling pretty good about myself, until I got completely flanked by a guy who must have been a professional paintball ninja. He popped up out of nowhere, shot me in the back, and disappeared before I even realized what happened. By the end of the day, we didn't win the tournament, obviously. We didn't even make it out of the first round of eliminations. But somehow, despite the pain and embarrassment, I had a blast. There was something oddly satisfying about the whole experience, even though I spent most of it getting shot at. Afterward, the other teams were pretty cool. Some of them came over to talk to us, give us advice, and share stories from their own paintball adventures. Apparently, everyone starts out getting obliterated, so at least we were part of a time-honored tradition. When we were finally leaving, I looked over at Ryan, who was already talking about coming back next weekend. I laughed and shook my head, yeah, maybe. But next time, I'm bringing better gear. I never did go back, though. Once was enough for me. But to this day, Ryan still plays. He even joined a real paintball team, and they compete in tournaments all over the state. Meanwhile, I stick to watching from the sidelines, content with my one accidental adventure into the world of competitive paintball. Lesson learned, always read the fine print, or at least ask a few more questions before you sign up for anything. Second story. I've lived in the same quiet neighborhood for about 5 years now, and while I don't go out of my way to socialize, I've had enough interactions with my neighbors to recognize a few faces. There's this guy, let's call him Derek, who lives across the street. We've never exchanged more than a few words, just the casual head nod or hey as we pass each other. He seemed like a decent enough guy, always working on his truck or mowing his lawn. Little did I know that one day, I'd be roped into something that felt straight out of a bad crime movie. It all started on a regular Tuesday afternoon. I had just gotten home from work and was looking forward to a quiet evening. As I was pulling into my driveway, I noticed Derek standing at the curb, looking pretty frantic. He was pacing back and forth, talking on his phone, and kept glancing down the street like he was waiting for something or someone. I didn't think much of it at first. People get stressed out over stuff all the time, right? I had barely turned off the engine when Derek rushed over to my car and knocked on my window. I rolled it down, a bit taken aback by how desperate he looked. "Hey, man, I'm in a bit of a situation," he started, breathing heavily. "I need a quick favor. Can you give me a lift down the road? It's urgent." I hesitated. My mind immediately started racing with all the possible reasons why he might need a ride. Maybe his car had broken down, or maybe he was late for some appointment. Still, something about the way he was acting made me uneasy. Where exactly are you trying to go?" I asked, trying to buy myself a moment to think. "Just a few blocks over," Derek said quickly, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Come on, man, I'll explain everything in the car. I just really need to go now." Against my better judgment, I agreed. I figured it was close by, and he didn't seem dangerous, just anxious. Maybe it was some sort of emergency. So I unlocked the passenger door, and Derek jumped in, still glancing nervously over his shoulder. As soon as we pulled out of the driveway, Derek started directing me toward a side street I wasn't too familiar with. The whole time, he was fidgeting with his phone, looking over his shoulder like he was expecting someone to chase us down. I was getting more uncomfortable by the second, but it was too late to back out now. "Look, I know this is weird," Derek said, finally breaking the silence. "I got into a bit of trouble, and I just need to lay low for a bit." That's when the alarm bells in my head really started going off. "What kind of trouble?" I asked, keeping my voice as steady as I could, even though my heart was pounding. Derek looked at me, his face pale and eyes wide. I might have borrowed something that wasn't mine," he mumbled, avoiding eye contact. "Borrowed? Like what? A lawnmower or something?" He shook his head, biting his lip. "Not exactly. More like some cash." Now I was regretting every decision that had led me to this moment. "How much cash are we talking about here?" Derek winced, looking out the window. "Couple grand." At that point, I seriously considered just pulling over and kicking him out of the car. But before I could say anything, he started panicking again, looking behind us like he expected someone to show up any second. "Just keep driving," he barked suddenly. "Take the next left." I followed his directions, but my patience was wearing thin. "Dude, you need to explain what's going on, right now. Who did you steal from?" Derek glanced at me like he was about to answer when suddenly, out of nowhere, a black SUV came barreling around the corner behind us, tires screeching. Derek's face went ghost white. "That's them! That's the guy I took the money from," he yelled, ducking down in his seat. "Go, go, go!" I floored it. My tiny sedan wasn't exactly built for high-speed chases, but adrenaline kicked in, and I sped through the neighborhood like my life depended on it. The SUV kept gaining on us, swerving in and out of lanes as it tried to cut us off. "Are you out of your mind?" I yelled at Derek, my knuckles turning white as I gripped the steering wheel. "You're gonna get us both killed." Derek was crouched down as low as he could go, muttering something under his breath that I couldn't make out. The SUV was practically on our tail now, and I was running out of options. I had no idea where I was going. All I knew was that I needed to lose that car. We raced through intersections, narrowly avoiding hitting other cars, and the SUV kept coming. I could hear the sound of my heartbeat in my ears, my mind going blank as pure survival mode kicked in. Every instinct I had was telling me to stop, but there was no way I could with that SUV breathing down my neck. Finally, in a last-ditch effort, I swerved into a narrow alleyway between two buildings, praying that the SUV wouldn't be able to follow. Miraculously, it worked. The SUV tried to make the turn but ended up crashing into a dumpster, giving us just enough time to make our escape. We kept driving for another few minutes until we were sure we'd lost them. My heart was still racing as I pulled into an empty parking lot and slammed on the brakes. "What the hell, man?" I shouted at Derek, who was finally sitting upright again. "You just made me a part of whatever insane mess you're in. I could have been killed." Derek was shaking, his face pale. "I'm sorry, man. I didn't know they'd come after me like that. I didn't mean to drag you into this." I sat there, staring at him, my mind racing. I had no idea what to do next. Call the cops? Drop him off somewhere and pretend this never happened? All I knew was that I wanted nothing more to do with Derek or his problems. "Get out of my car," I finally said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and fear. "I don't care where you go, but I'm done." Derek didn't argue. He mumbled another apology and slunk out of the car, disappearing into the night. I drove home in silence, still in shock at what had just happened. The next day, Derek's truck was gone, and I haven't seen him since. Sometimes I wonder if he ever got caught, but honestly, I'm just glad I made it out of that situation in one piece. I never thought I'd end up playing getaway driver in a real-life crime, but hey, I guess you never really know what your neighbors are capable of. Third story. Alright, so this is one of those stories that still makes me cringe every time I think about it. It's one of those moments where, in the span of a few minutes, I went from being the best friend ever to the guy who almost destroyed a life-changing moment. Let me set the scene for you. My best friend, Nick, has been dating his girlfriend, Sarah, for about 4 years. They're the kind of couple that makes you believe in all that meant-to-be stuff. They're perfect together, like, they laugh at each other's stupid jokes, finish each other's sentences, and basically make everyone else's relationships look average by comparison. A few months ago, Nick came to me with a huge secret: he was going to propose to Sarah. Naturally, I was thrilled for him. He had been planning it for months, saving up for a ring, and thinking of the perfect way to pop the question. He finally landed on doing it at a concert. But not just any concert, this was a big, outdoor show for their favorite band. Sarah had been dying to go for years, and Nick had gotten VIP tickets. It was all set up to be the perfect night. Here's where I come in. Nick asked me to help him set up the moment. I was supposed to capture everything on video and make sure I got the best angle when he went down on one knee. My job was simple: record the proposal, don't say anything, and stay out of the way. Easy, right? Well, apparently not for me. The day of the concert came, and Nick, Sarah, and I all went together. The atmosphere was electric, the music was incredible, and everything seemed to be going perfectly. I had my phone ready for when the big moment came. Nick had planned to propose during one of their favorite songs. It was their song, you know, the one they first danced to when they started dating. It was supposed to be super romantic. As the song started, Nick gave me the signal. My heart was racing, and I was honestly more nervous than I probably should have been. But I was ready. I had the camera on, and I was about to capture one of the most important moments in my friend's life. Then, it happened. The band started playing the song, and I realized something horrible. My phone was dying. Like, not low battery or dying, I'm talking 1% and about to shut down. In my panic, I tried to switch to my backup camera, but in my fumbling, I accidentally hit the flashlight button instead. So, there I was, standing next to Nick and Sarah, with my flashlight blinding them as they were having their moment. Nick was down on one knee, Sarah was tearing up, and there I was, shining a literal spotlight on the whole thing. It was like some kind of weird interrogation scene, not the intimate, beautiful proposal Nick had envisioned. I quickly turned off the flashlight, but the damage was done. Sarah was laughing at the absurdity of it all, Nick looked like he wanted to murder me, and the people around us were now focused on the guy with the phone instead of the couple having a proposal. But that wasn't even the worst part. In my panic to fix the camera situation, I started frantically whispering to Nick, trying to tell him I messed up. What I didn't realize was that my whispering was more like frantic yelling, and it was completely audible to Sarah. She turned to me, mid-proposal, and asked, "What's going on?" I froze. Nick, still on one knee, gave me this look like, "Really, dude?" I wanted to disappear into the ground. I quickly shut up, but the moment was kind of ruined. Nick managed to salvage it by giving a heartfelt speech, and thankfully, Sarah still said yes. Everyone around us cheered, but I knew I had messed up. After the proposal, Nick pulled me aside and laughed it off, but I could tell he was a bit annoyed. "Man, you had one job," he said, shaking his head. I felt terrible. All he wanted was for me to record the moment, and I had turned it into a comedy of errors. At least Sarah thought it was hilarious, and they both seemed to be in good spirits afterward. Looking back, it's funny now. Nick and Sarah joke about how their proposal was so us because nothing ever goes according to plan in their lives. They ended up loving the chaos of it all, saying it was memorable in its own way. They even kept the botched video, flashlight and all, as a funny reminder of the day. But man, at the time, I thought I had ruined everything. It just goes to show that no matter how much you plan, life has a way of throwing you curveballs. And sometimes, those curveballs come in the form of a dying phone battery and a rogue flashlight. So, yeah, that's the story of how I almost ruined my best friend's proposal. Lesson learned: always check your phone battery before recording someone's life-changing moment.